Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live session from the Dish Academy. Today, we are going to learn one of the most interesting topics. So, stay tuned in, watch the session, and try to learn as much as possible. I hope you enjoy from this session, you take new things, and also you remember all the tips and tricks that we share here. So today we are going to take up the topic of punctuation marks. So what are punctuations? Now, multiple times I've seen candidates are asking me the use of punctuation in the writing task. Now, if you go to see, punctuation are the use of special symbols that you add so that you are able to tell, okay, this sentence is a question, this is an exclamatory sentence, or there are two different elements over here. Now, using punctuation is going to make your writing look professional, logical, and well founded. And if you do not use any punctuation at all, it will not make sense. However, if you overuse too much, it can make your writing look distorted and vague. So it is very important to remember how punctuation has to be used. And I also want to tell you that you have assessment criteria in writing. And punctuation forms one of the assessment criteria in the writing subtest. Now, if you find punctuation confusing, rest assured, you're not the only one who does that. Now, even native English speakers have some trouble when it comes to using the right punctuation marks. Now, they aren't as confusing as you think. When you break them down, when you understand them, and if you want to master your writing, whether it's an essay or even if it's for an OET letter, it is very important how to use each punctuation marks. So today we are going to learn about it in detail. So stay tuned in. Now, the first one and the most common one is the full stop. Now, it is very straightforward and it is very easy, but I have seen multiple times students forget to use it. And this makes it confusing where the sentence has ended and where another sentence has started. So, a full sentence is a one that is complete and declarative. So, here is an example of the period. The dog ran under the fence. So here we have used the full stop because the sentence is complete. Now they're also used in abbreviations such as in names or in titles. So here are some examples. Dr. Smith read his patient's chart. So if you see over here, we have put a dot where we want to show Dr. Smith. Now, Mr. H. Potter opened his front door. Now, capital letters in OET writing. Now, capital letters, one more very important element. So, I have seen students getting confused. When should I use a capital letter? Is it necessary to apply it there? Should I remove it from here? So, most of the OET aspirants are confused when to use capital letters. So, let's clear this confusion. Now, the first rule is all your proper nouns should be capitalized. So, if you're talking about something in particular, now, I would like to tell you, please learn to identify which is a proper noun. So, if it is the name of your patient, if you're talking about the name of the hospital, if there is some place in particular, that is a proper noun. Now, let me differentiate. If I'm talking about, let's say, cities in general, it does not mean that is a proper noun. But if I'm talking about a particular city, then that becomes a proper noun. So you need to identify if you're using a proper noun, it has to be capitalized. Then capitalize the names of any drugs or any manufactured product such as aspirin, Tylenol, Valium. If you're using something in particular and in your case notes they are in capital, you also have to capitalize the names of drugs. Now, names of diseases which are proper nouns. Now, here I have seen a confusion. I'm telling you a disease, not a symptom. If you're talking about a normal symptom, for example, the patient has trouble remembering, that does not have to be in capital. But if the patient is diagnosed with a particular condition, Alzheimer's, Down syndrome, so that disease has to be a proper noun. So please be careful that you are identifying it is not a generic medical condition, it is not a symptom. I'm only talking about the name of a particular disease that should be a proper noun. Next, fever, nausea, diabetes. Now, all these are generic medical condition and symptoms. So again, I'll repeat, please do not capitalize this. Know the difference between diseases and know the difference between a generic medical condition and symptoms. If you're talking about any faculties, departments, programs, so in case if you're using any of these in your letters, then you can use this in capital, like neurology department, faculty of medicine. This has to be capitalized. Next, places mentioned in the address. So when you're copying the address, most of the times they have mentioned those in capital, but make sure that these places like Edinburgh, Australia, New Street, you're using this, this has to be a capital. Now, I cannot tell you the amount of times I've corrected letters where I've seen the pronoun I is written in small. So I request you, please cross check this. Now, please don't get confused with the letter I. Now, the letter I, if it is appearing somewhere, let's say if you're writing ice cream, it is not necessary that has to be in capital. I'm talking about pronoun I, which refers to you in person. So when you're using the pronoun I, that always has to be in capital. So for example, I am referring the above mentioned patient. So multiple times if you're using I, no matter where it comes in the sentence, I'll repeat this again, even if it comes in the middle of the sentence, it has to be in capital. Okay. Now, rule number 7, you need to capitalize holidays, months, and days of the week. So on Tuesday, she was asked to come for a follow-up. Or for example, if you're writing on 7th October, that has to be in capital. So please take note of this. Moving ahead, commas. Now, here also a lot of confusion with the usage of commas. Let's understand where a comma is used. Now, you need to use a comma to separate independent clauses. Now, what do I mean by independent clauses? Independent clause means a sentence which can stand on its own. So, for example, if I tell you that the patient received medication, this sentence is complete, it can stand on its own. It does not require any additional information. So this is called as an independent clause. For example, if I start my sentence with after receiving medication, this is not an independent clause. So if I want to separate two independent clauses and I'm using some coordinating conjunction and but, so we can use over here. So you remember the 7 coordinating conjunctions for, and, but. So the common ones that we use are and, but, so. So here we are going to use a conjunction and then we can use a comma to separate it. So for example, Mr. Patel was recommended physiotherapy, comma, and he will begin his sessions on Friday. So in this sentence, you are saying that Mr. Patel was recommended physiotherapy and he will begin his sessions on Friday. So you're expressing a full thought and it can stand alone as a sentence. Now, the next rule. The next rule says if you have an introductory element, a phrase, or a clause, it is common to use a comma after the introductory element to separate it from the rest of the sentence. So, for example, during his last consultation. Now, this part here is the introductory element. If we are saying last consultation, after that, what happened? Mr. Patel reported improved mobility after his knee replacement surgery. So I was able to completely tell you what exactly happened and how the patient's progress took place. So this comma here is separating from the rest of the sentence. Very important. Now use commas to separate elements also. Now when you're listing 3 or more items, now Oxford comma, it is not that compulsory to be used, but we recommend it should be used. So for example, I advise Ms. Davis to eat a balanced diet, comma, increase her physical activity and attend regular checkups to monitor her diabetes. So this comma that is here Even if you don't use it, not a hard and fast rule, but still advised to use it. Next, use a comma to set off non-essential information. So if you have any non-essential information like a word, a phrase, or a clause that is not essential to the meaning of the sentence, it is called as a non-essential element. For example, Miss Shaina, despite experiencing mild discomfort post-surgery, is recovering well and eagerly wants to return home. Now, in this sentence, I despite experiencing mild discomfort post surgery. Now, this part is a non essential element. I can still continue the sentence saying that Miss Shaina is recovering well and eagerly wants to return home. Without that, also, the sentence makes sense. So, here I'm using this as an extra element. So, I'm putting commas on both the sides to inform that, okay, this information is not that important, but it can be understood. The sentence makes more better meaning with the help of it. Now, use comma after a dependent clause that begins a sentence. Now, often a comma follows a dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence to indicate that the dependent clause has started, and also it represents the main part. So, it is frequently observed when you have a subordinating conjunction like although, if, when, while, after, until, because. When you're using such conjunctions, we use comma. So here, if you see, although Mr. Peterson has made some improvements in his health, he still requires ongoing monitoring of his blood sugar levels. Now, some of the common errors people make with commas, and I've also given the corrected sentences. The first one is you are joining two sentences with a comma only. This is called as a comma splice. Now, what happens here is if you're going to use a comma to join sentences, that is wrong. See, you can utilize a connector, which we had learned in the last session, like and, or you can use a semicolon, or you can separate them into two different sentences. So Dr. Dan checked the patient's lab results. He didn't find anything wrong. The correct way to frame this would be Dr. Dan checked the patient's lab results and didn't find anything wrong. So please make sure you use a comma only if it's an introductory element. It does not mean that if it's a complete sentence, I can join that using a comma. That's wrong. Okay. The next error that we have is using comma with a defining relative clause. Now, I've seen a lot of confusion. Now, a defining relative clause is something that you cannot get rid of because it specifically defines some part of the sentence. Now, you don't have to separate this defining relative clause from the rest of the sentence with commas. That's wrong. So, the patient who has type 2 diabetes should continue taking his insulin medicine. Now, I don't need to put that who has, now this is very essential to note that this patient has type 2 diabetes. So it is a continuous part of sentence. I have seen this error multiple places. Do not put a comma with a relative clause. So when you're using who, which, the patient who is suffering from, not needed to put a comma. Okay, so please take note of this. Now, next one, using an unnecessary comma with two actions. See, you don't need a comma when the same person or thing is doing two different things. So, for example, Mrs. Phillip has a checkup next week and also needs more tests. Mrs. Phillip has a checkup next week and needs more tests. So, here they have not used the comma. So, when you have a coordinating conjunction, okay, you can use that, but here it is not needed when the same person is doing two different things. So not required. Like I said, there was no hard and fast rule. So I would advise if you feel it is not necessary, please don't use it. Okay. Now, apostrophe. Apostrophe is used to show that certain letters have been omitted from a word. It can also used to show the possessive form of a noun, in addition to indicating the plural form of lowercase letters. So, for example, an apostrophe is used to show contraction. So, if we have a contraction, we can show it with the help of an apostrophe. Like I am, I can write it in short, I'm. Or if I have over here do not, I can put it in short, don't. It is, it's. Or I can also use For example, he is. So these kind of short forms we can use. However, I recommend in the letter, please avoid using this. This is just in general to tell you when you're writing an essay, you can use this. Now, the second use, the possessive form you can use. For example, here he joined Charles's army, or for example, the patient's relative. So you're showing the possessive form that patient's relative. Sally's hair was blonde and curly. So here you're showing Emily's condition improved. Now I have put the S over here to show the possession form that her condition, or Emily's lab reports. I'm showing you the possessive form that her lab reports. Please make sure you're putting a apostrophe, keeping some space, and then adding the S. So here the apostrophe makes sense because it is indicating the possession. So we have put together an anthology of children's poetry. Or the boy's sister traveled by bus to meet us. Now, colon. Now, colon is a fairly used punctuation mark. It has a number of uses. One is it can be used to introduce a quotation. For example, if you're talking about a series. So, for example, if I want to talk about seasons, I will start seasons. I'll put a comma. So, I'm showing you that, okay, what this exactly is about. I will be explaining, okay, you can see we have different types of seasons that we experience in a year. So here, in order to introduce something, I can start with a colon. It can also be used to separate two different independent clauses. So I can do that. And it can be used to show emphasis. So here, you have two choices: finish the work today or lose the contract. See, that's because we have one goal: for you to consider your website a success. So here they have used it in different ways. Like I said, colon is mostly used to show an introductory element. So if you want to emphasize something, we use a colon. John has all the ingredients, means clam, milk, potatoes, and onions. Now, the semicolon. Now, this I have seen students again confused. I would again recommend, if you are confused, simply stick to the ones you know. It is not necessary to overcomplicate your sentences using this. Now, let me just explain you in simple terms where this is used. Now, it is used to separate two independent clauses. However, I'll repeat the next part only if there is a close relationship that exists between them. So it does a better job of showing the connection between two statements than a full stop would. So if you look, my daughter is a teacher, my son is a doctor. Now this is, again, you're showing the relationship. Someone is talking about both the kids, so you are able to show a relationship better here. See, there are 8 members in the team. 2 are from China, Japan, 3 from France and Spain, and 2 from Brazil and 1 from India. So can you see they had a lot of element of information that they had to show, and they were able to show the connection very easily with the help of the semicolon. So they separated it. So 2 are from these places, 3 are from these places, 2 are from these places, and 1 is from this place. So a semicolon made it easier for people to understand and differentiate. So only in that place you will use a semicolon. Richard always slept with the light on. He was afraid of the dark. So here again, we are showing a close relationship between two things and why it is happening. So we are able to demonstrate it with the help of a semicolon. Now, parenthesis. Parenthesis refers to a bracket that we use. So they are quotation marks that show additional thoughts about a statement. So they can be replaced by commas without changing the meaning. So often if you want to use some less important details, for example, I have seen sometimes we need to add about the dosage of a medication, or you want to add more about some specification, you can use parentheses. Like the two brothers, Richard and Sean, were learning how to play the guitar. So these are all the different elements of punctuations that we learned today. I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you understood what we learned today and what you understood from the different punctuation marks. And I also want you to take different things that we learned here, also the common errors, to take note of that and make sure that you don't repeat this in the future. So it is very crucial, and I recommend this to all my students before submitting your letter or whenever you're writing an essay. Just make a quick check. It will take you hardly 2 or 3 seconds, but that will save marks. It is very important. A quick glance whether I've put I in capital, whether I've put a full stop, whether I have used apostrophe at the right place, whether I've made sure that, okay, comma is put in the right place. This will save you marks. So please make sure that you're taking this into consideration. I hope you all enjoyed the session that we did today. Hoping to see you again and to learn new things and come up with new ideas for you. Please comment, subscribe to our channel that what you like the most, and also let us know which was your favorite punctuation mark that you learned today. I hope you have a great day ahead. Please make sure that you keep learning and keep practicing. Wish you all a great weekend. God bless you.